Welcome back to another episode of Destin Talks to Random Cool People. This time we have on Tom Henderson. Tom, you run Insider Gaming, right?
Yes, Insider Gaming, yeah.
Congratulations on your success with that. It's pretty cool. It seems like you've been expanding. But for those who don't know, maybe you could tell us a bit more about yourself as much as you want to, because you've said that this is all you want people to know right now, the snowmobile picture, right? And what you're doing with Insider Gaming.
Yeah, so I can give you the full rundown of how this interesting journey started, if you like.
I'd love it.
I started with a YouTube channel in my teenage years, doing what everybody liked to do as a teenager. Doing videos on Call of Duty, some occasional on Battlefield and GTA and that kind of thing. And it was around 11, 12 years ago when I started to get sources related to Call of Duty. So I started making videos on some of the information I was given, so some of the leaks of what's coming up in a upcoming DLC and that kind of thing. And that eventually led me to get picked up by some different agencies who was working on Call of Duty websites and that kind of thing. So I started doing freelance writing on several different websites with those agencies, and then that progressed into me doing stuff like social media management, content creator relationships, and that kind of thing. And then I also made my own social media network, which did something like 60 to 75 million views per month. And then around 3 years ago, well, I'd say probably at the start of COVID is when things changed. And then around 3 years ago, I started doing like freelance reporting for various different websites. I even got one on IGN, which I'm pretty stoked about. And then from there, we decided to launch Insider Gaming and kind of just do it on my own and see what we could do. And so far, we've been doing pretty well. So that's kind of the story on my background and where we are at the moment.
How many people do you have over at Insider Gaming right now?
At the moment, we have 4 full-time staff, and then we've got 2 to 3, possibly 4, depending on what game is out and that kind of thing, who will help doing other coverage on like guides and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I've seen some of the videos that you guys do. I like them, and I watch them pretty regular. So thank you for the work. I often source you in my personal YouTube videos because I think you often are the, you know, when you're looking into a story, you're like, okay, this site's sorting this, sourcing this site, and this site's sorting, and there's Insider Gaming.
Yeah.
You know, sort of at the tail end of it, more often than not. But anyway, I'm sort of curious about one of the leaks that happened recently. And I think the big one that ended up getting retracted later was this whole Starfield leak.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up getting retracted by, I believe it was Nate the Hate who broke that one. Am I correct in that?
He was one of... So basically what happened is there was a lot of these different insiders, leakers at the same time doing the same report. And there was all seemingly corroborating each other, and then it kind of just spiraled from there. I'm not sure if Nate the Hate was the first, but there was kind of a bunch of them all doing the same reports at the same time.
And eventually it seems like that sort of quieted down. So my question for you is really, do you still think that there's a possibility? Well, Phil Spencer said never say never, right? But do you still think that Starfield, Indy, and other flagship Xbox games are headed to PlayStation and Nintendo based off of how everything sort of shook out with the 4 games we know of now going to competing platforms?
Yeah, so there is some internal rumors going around about how all of that stuff came to be. There was a big rumor going around that there was someone over at Xbox that just had some very ill intentions and was kind of trying to just stir up the drama, so to speak. But I wouldn't be surprised that those are discussions that happened, right? So they had a discussion that, right, we're going to take Starfield over R&D or whatever it may be. I wouldn't be at all surprised that those discussions happened. However, those are discussions that happen all of the time, and even with PlayStation, they're probably now seeing what Helldivers 2's done on the PC, and they're probably having discussions of what they can do moving forward with the PC. And some of that stuff should and shouldn't be reported on. And with the way that the Xbox community kind of is, I wasn't surprised that it spiraled out of control, so to speak. But yeah, I wouldn't at all be surprised if these four games are just the beginning and it feels like they're just testing the waters with four little games that are not these major AAA games that are necessary for the Xbox platform, but they're just testing the waters and then seeing where they can go moving forward. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of these major games go over to different platforms in the coming years.
See, I think Phil Spencer's been pretty clear that, at least in the podcast, it doesn't seem like there's an intention to bring Starfield or Indiana Jones over to PlayStation. And he even went on during the show to discuss how you shouldn't expect this to become a norm or something that's regularly going to happen. They were just doing it with some of these well-regarded titles that have sort of reached market saturation on their individual platform. And as an Xbox fan and somebody that really appreciates the Xbox community, it's been really depressing to just see how it's all been interpreted, because there's a lot of fear right now within the Xbox community. And just unfortunately, it just seems like they're just not really excited about the Xbox brand anymore. And these are people who have been longtime fans. So I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I think that Starfield isn't one of those games that are coming by the end of the year. We're seeing new accounts pop up this week that are saying Starfield's definitely coming to PlayStation. Some PlayStation community members are having a reaction to Ghost of Tsushima coming to PC. And the reality of the situation is I think the true console exclusive is dead, and it's been dead for a long time.
Yeah.
Or dying in PlayStation's case. I think the only reason PlayStation has taken so long is because they're trying to get their PC operations up to snuff and figure out how to do it in quicker succession with the core release. What do you think PlayStation's strategy is going to be with their new PC initiative that we've seen popping off?
Yeah, first of all, on the Xbox front, it's from the presentation that Phil Spencer did with Sarah Bond and Matt Booter. That was all fine and well, and then just a couple of hours later, you had, I think it was an interview with The Verge and Tom Warren, right? Where then Phil is saying never say never. Mm-hmm. So you're getting these insane mixed messages coming from the Xbox side, which makes people question everything that they're doing. So I don't know if Starfield is coming over to PlayStation or not. Of course, I do believe that there was a discussion there at some point. And that's why now I think we are seeing these accounts come out from the woodworks and start to say that Starfield's coming out later this year and that kind of thing, because, well, Xbox are not giving the concrete answers that the community needs.
Yeah.
And this is a battle that they're going to be fighting now for the foreseeable future until they do decide, right, moving forward, because console exclusivity is dying, we're now going to do a timed exclusive, for example. So Indiana Jones is going to be an Xbox exclusive for 1 year, and then it's going over to PlayStation at $70. And I think that is where the industry is going with both PlayStation and Xbox. Nintendo are just their own kettle of fish, right? They're just their own massive giant on the side. But yeah, that's where I think that we are probably heading. And in the next 2 to 3 years, probably by the time the next generation comes along, we are going to see the shift from console exclusive over to timed exclusive, because I just think it makes a lot of sense. And with these 4 games that Xbox have already come out with, they're not going to complain if each of these games do 500k units on average on PlayStation or Nintendo or whatever it may be. And, $60 million extra or whatever it may be is not something to stop doing, right? So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction that both PlayStation and Xbox are heading towards.
How do you feel about the end of the console exclusive? Because for me, on the one hand, I'm happy that more people are going to be able to play these acclaimed games that a lot of people in the Xbox community adore and really, really appreciate. I'm excited by that aspect. On the other hand, it certainly seems like it doesn't mean any more games for Xbox fans. Like, I don't see Final Fantasy VII Remake over on Xbox yet, and that was rumored as far back as 2022 as a thing that would happen, and it just never came to be. How do you feel about the exclusive ending and benefiting PlayStation and Nintendo more than it benefits the third placer?
Yeah, there's obviously 2 arguments here, where I've seen the argument of, well, it's fine for live service and multiplayer games to go across to these different platforms, but these single player experiences need solely to be for this platform. To be honest, I don't really see it that big of an issue, especially if there is going to be this timed exclusivity moving forward. The Xbox or PlayStation or whoever making an extra amount of money 12 months on is only good for that platform.
Mm-hmm.
It increases their revenues, which will increase their ability to make more games, and that's just something that we can all enjoy. So, yeah, I'm excited about the future, and I'm not necessarily that bothered that we are moving towards this this time where we are moving towards not console exclusivity.
Yeah, I kind of agree about it. I think it could end up being better in the long run, especially a year like now, like 2024 and even 2023, where there's rampant layoffs. It's very clear that the entire industry needs to and is currently recalibrating in terms of what they do with their games. One of the big stories this week is actually something I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and that is the Warner Brothers situation, where they just had this ginormous flop. Let me just bring it up here really quick. So they just had this huge flop, and I'm just going to bring it up as an overlay because I didn't set up the other viewpoint. But basically, here's the quote. He said, most of WB Games' business to date has been driven by 4 separate franchises: Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and the DC universe, each of which is a $1 billion business in and of itself. The challenge we've had is our business historically in games has been very AAA console based, Perrette said. That's a great business when you have a hit like Harry Potter. It makes the year look amazing. And when you don't have a release, or unfortunately you have disappointments, we just released Suicide Squad this quarter, which was not as strong. That's a nice way to put it. It just makes it very volatile. So rather than just launching a one-and-done console game, how do we develop a game around, for example, Hogwarts Legacy or Harry Potter that is a live service where people can come in and live and work and build and play in that world on an ongoing basis, Perrette said. I'd love to hear your take on the whole Warner Brothers situation and their read on what players want.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. Hogwarts Legacy, of course, was a massive hit. It did 22 million units in its first year, which is what, at $70, 1.5-ish million, 1.6 million, billion, sorry. And we've seen it in the financial report, and this is where he is right with what he said, is that after that, then there was a massive drop in revenues because Hogwarts Legacy is now essentially done, right? It's a 1-year game, and then after that, you see a 90% drop in revenues.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I do understand it. From the point of view of investors, obviously, a drop is a drop. It doesn't matter how high the number was before. It's always going to look bad. But we know that their next big live service game that they're going to do is Harry Potter, like a Quidditch Champions, I believe it's called,
Right.
which is essentially a Rocket League Harry Potter game. So just like the movies, it's where you're playing Quidditch and you can do like maneuvers and that sort of stuff like you do with Rocket League, pass the ball to players and that kind of thing. But is that Quidditch game really going to be a $1.5 billion game? Is it even going to be, let's just say that, for example, let's just say that this game did 10% in development costs to Hogwarts Legacy. Is that still going to do 150 million compared to the 1.5, 1.6 billion that Hogwarts Legacy did? I don't think so. And to me, this just screams that they're just chasing after trying to do a Fortnite, trying to do a Warzone where you're bringing in billions of dollars of revenue every single year. And this is something that Ubisoft has been doing for the past 4 or 5 years, and we've yet to see one from Ubisoft. So for every one big hit they get, they're going to have 100 fails. And I just feel like they're just going to cancel each other out by the time that one big hit comes around, and they're not really going to see any profits at all. So yeah, to me it's very frustrating. It indicates that there is a big change in the industry that we're seeing, and for a big player like Warner Bros to say this is a bit concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very concerned about the direction of Warner Brothers, given the fact that Suicide Squad flopped so badly, and it seems like they want to lean into more properties like that. They talk about living and working in these games. It's just like, I think people are getting a little bit soft on these because even Destiny had the 45% revenue miss. Like, these aren't seeing success the way that these companies hope. I don't know where Anthem wound up. I think it probably broke even, if that, in terms of what they did. But like, there's a ton of behind the scenes stories about how rough development was on that game. Now there was a lot of crunch, and it's really, really unfortunate to see these companies double down on that. And the really crazy part, I don't know, do you ever play Injustice Mobile?
No, I didn't know.
So like, they have the winning formula with the NetherRealm IP. Release a mobile companion app that gives you rewards in the main game and give people reasons to sign on every week with recurring events in the game like they do with the towers. Like Mortal Kombat and Injustice really had it figured out with the tail end of these games and allowing you to recoup the losses without having a drastic impact on the core product. So I am completely baffled how something like Suicide Squad can come along and they see that as a failure, and then they're like, yeah, but we want to make more stuff. We're going to try it again and see if we get it right this time. It just seems so out of touch. We're behind the times even. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Why not just do a Hogwarts Legacy every 4 years and get 1.5 billion every 4 years? But they don't see it as that, unfortunately. But yeah, this is just a direction that we're seeing with a lot of publishers. I know that the next Battlefield is going to have a live service battle royale connected to it in the same way that Call of Duty has Warzone. So we're seeing EA now tap into that even more with its major franchises. Of course, there was the news, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, that they're going to focus on their own IP rather than licensed IP. So it seems like they're going to go in that direction. Ubisoft have been going in that direction for years now, and it's not really paying off. And yeah, this is just another publisher that just, I don't want to say doesn't seem to get it, but at the same time, I do want to say that they just don't get it. They just don't know what they're doing. Yeah, very frustrating.
Yeah, EA has all these successes with like the Dead Space remake. Great single player remake, lauded by a community, and they're like, yeah, that made us $1 billion, but what if they don't want a lot of money? They want all of the money. And that's the problem, right? These companies have winning ideas, and you just said Harry Potter made $1 billion, but that's not good enough. Like, you don't even need to modernize the engine. You don't need to do a ton. Just come up with another Harry Potter story and release that in a few years, the way that Sony has figured out with the Spider-Man franchise. And it certainly seems like Sony has also figured out that you don't need to drastically modernize the engine every single time. You don't have to invest like an additional $100 million into the development to see high returns, because they looked at Miles Morales, they looked at Spider-Man remastered and stuff, and they're like, oh, we paid a lot less to make those, and they did great. Maybe we didn't need to drop 100 million extra on Spider-Man 2 for that. Do you think companies are going to look at that and maybe realize that
Yeah.
we're at a point with technology where that isn't particularly beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so we've seen it with PlayStation, doing it with Spider-Man. Of course, we had the God of War, Valhalla, was it called?
Yeah, that's fantastic. That was free.
Yeah, yeah. So we had that. The Assassin's Creed series is now going into that direction where it's just going to be one unified engine across all of its titles. So yeah, it makes complete sense for them to do that. And yeah, I think that's the direction we're probably going in. And as far as Warner Bros. Is concerned, just do Hogwarts Legacy 2. It's an easy 1 billion in 3-4 years. Just do that. Keep it on the same engine, and yeah, don't really bother with all of this live service stuff that they seemingly want to go in. I did see a lot of confusion online, or that the Hogwarts Legacy 2, for example, is going to be live service. To me, it doesn't really read like that. It reads that they're just going to go on with all of these other different projects, new IPs maybe. And I do think they will do a Hogwarts Legacy 2 that will be a single player game, but it's just frustrating to see that they want to lean into this direction.
Yeah, especially when these companies have some of our favorite games at their disposal and they just decide to often squander greatness. Like they have the Nemesis system and they just sit on it. It's really frustrating as somebody who is aware of what they're capable of. We talked a little bit about exclusives. One of the questions I wrote that I don't know if I sent to you, but it was about that Nvidia leak. It's like a 2-year-old leak that has slowly but surely become truer and truer. Do you think that eventually all the PlayStation games on that list, with Gran Turismo 7 and Demon's Souls still on there and waiting to come to PC, do you think eventually that those are on the way, or are those going to stay locked on the box?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Every game that's come over to PC has seemingly been a success for PlayStation, so I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, it's a little dicey to be looking at a 2-year-old leak and trying to determine if things have changed or not. But Helldivers 2 is just a prime example that the PC audience needs to be tapped into more, and I think we're just seeing that across Xbox as well, that we need to they need to do it right. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but at the moment I don't really have any indications on myself that they will be coming. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising to me that making games with like a very clear focus and a clear goal and a clear intention with their design, and releasing them day and date with PC, like Helldivers 2, it's got PC, it's got PS5. I don't know if it's on PS4 or not, but it has crossplay between those two brands, I believe, correct? So,
yeah, I think so, yeah.
Well, even if it doesn't, the point being is that a lot of people just really, really like that game, and it's because I believe the creators didn't really sacrifice a lot of their core vision. And I do wonder if some of these companies are getting too large. There's too many cooks in the kitchen, I think is a good way to put it. And I do wonder if some of that clarity is being lost in terms of strategy or vision for a product. Do you think that's part of the problem?
Yeah, I mean, developers want to just create games, right? They want to see their own ideas come to fruition. And unfortunately, when you are a big billion-dollar or trillion-dollar company, you're always going to have people breathing down your neck and trying to make changes that you don't agree with. So yeah, I think that's a fair assessment to say that. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I've seen people say something to the tune of basically there's so many writers in one room that you kind of end up with a watered down story because everybody's making sacrifices as opposed to like just a handful of writers working together towards a common goal to release a product. And I do worry about that. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, in Suicide Squad's case, it certainly did not result in a good story having more writers than they did for the original Arkham series trilogy anyway.
Yeah, there's horror stories across the industry where people are just management are enforcing changes that shouldn't be made and that kind of stuff. I am working on a story at the moment of one of those companies, and it's just sad to see because the thing that developers always say is we just want to make games.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to do it our way with our vision. We don't want to be influenced by, hey, let's make this game a live service and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's frustrating for me to hear, and I can only imagine what it's like for those developers just to have to deal with that stuff on a daily basis.
I would be frustrated. I know that because it's just like they probably agree with a lot of the sentiment and have their own frustrations with what went down. On a more positive note, we did have a little bit of a event this week. I don't know. Did you watch the Xbox partner preview?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. Yeah.
Any standouts for you? I got an image here of all of the games that were revealed. I had one that I really liked, but was there anything that you found notable from the event?
Yeah, I thought that Tales of Kanzara looked pretty cool. I think that's going to fill the itch following on from what I think was probably a Game of the Year contender with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I really enjoyed that game. And yeah, I think that's going to fill the itch for me from what they've announced. And Creatures of Ava also looked pretty interesting. I did laugh at did you see the comments on the live stream calling it Pal World 2 and stuff?
Oh yeah.
It's like, are we really going to end up now at that place where every game that has creatures is Pal World 2?
Yeah.
But yeah, that looked pretty interesting as well.
My pick of the show was definitely the altars. I just think it's a really interesting concept. The main gameplay premise is that you're going to be basically trying to survive on this planet. So it seems like a lot of mini games, but the story element of being a character that's stranded on this planet who makes copies of himself. But the way you make those copies are you pick a key moment in your life and make a change. Like, what if I would have stayed in college instead of dropping out? And then you get that character and then they can do something in the engine. I just find that really interesting. And so that was definitely my pick of the show. The first Berserker Kazan, very, very cool, like a Souls-like but animated style. Very interested in that one, and it is cool that Final Fantasy XIV finally has a real release date on Xbox. It's actually happening. Can you believe it?
Yeah. The Stalker trilogy as well, of course.
Yes.
Shadow dropping was a pretty nice surprise.
Yeah, so that's coming to console. It's $39.99. If you're a PC player, you can get all those games on Steam right now for like $13. So I recommend doing that if you're a PC player.
Yeah.
But I also think it's awesome that they're coming to console and people will get to experience that trilogy. And it like that money will just go back to the company who is making Stalker 2, which everybody is absolutely stoked about. One of the last questions I had for you was just sort of like the current state on the media side of things of the industry. Do you feel like it's in a good place right now? Because on the one hand, I see stuff like Insider Gaming starting to pop up. But on the other hand, we hear stuff like Rooster Teeth just shutting down. WB shutting down Rooster Teeth is another decision that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But to each like, how do you feel about how everything has been in 2024? It's tumultuous.
Yeah, I feel like the media industry is just kind of going through the same consolidation as the gaming industry. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a lot of these big corporate websites and companies closing and that kind of thing. And I do think that we are moving towards a media industry where we are going to have these 4 to 5 people teams, or if it's bigger than that, maybe a dozen or so people, websites, whatever, and yeah, it's just consolidation. I think companies have got too big. They've tried to chase trends themselves. Of course, I do think we are going to see some websites doing the SEO push of paying people $5 an article to just get ranks on Google. But I really do think we are heading towards this 4, 5, 6 person team website or company. Like Second Wind, for example, I think they're more than that. They're like 12, 15, right? But then and again, how many companies like that are we going to have that are going to be fan or audience funded? We could end up in a similar situation where there's just too many of these companies that are fan funded. But yeah, I think unfortunately we're just in a bit of a tough spot right now, between a rock and a hard place, with RPMs just dwindling down and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's where I think we are.
Yeah, ad revenue is really bad this year. Like everybody's sort of
terrible
publicly about it. It's shockingly low, versus the last 5 years. It's been pretty decent, and then all of a sudden it just evaporated. So that's definitely been concerning, especially for the smaller sites. But to your point, we have seen a lot of cool stuff come up over the last few years. I think Kinda Funny kind of kicked it off. We have Second Wind pop up, and these big sites get eaten up by a bigger company, and then eventually something like Second Wind happens where they're like, hey, we're going to fire a bunch of people. They're like, all right, we're just going to do it ourselves. Like, whatever, we'll just leave. And the community sees that, and it's like all the best stuff about the sites that you like end up going out and creating their own thing, like in the Second Wind case. And I find that really inspirational. You also see stuff like, another example would be sort of like the Iron Lords podcast kind of pops up, and they're pretty regular. Seasoned Gaming is another smaller one with Rick Hogue, and I really like seeing that, because those people are just passionate about gaming, and they're just kind of doing it for the love of the game, and I do like seeing that. And personally, I'm definitely on the opposite end, partially because I work at IGN. I don't really want to see all these legacy sites go down. I know there's a lot of disdain for Kotaku right now. They don't seem to be going anywhere because everybody reads their stuff, right? I do wonder what the future is going to hold. I personally have always just covered stuff that I like and I'm interested in, and I don't really worry about much else, right? Like like when I covered GT versus Forza, that was a question that I was curious about. Like, how do these perform on a sim rig, and how do they look visually compared to each other? And that's always just what I'm into. And for me, and I imagine for you also, because you started a whole company around it, there are people out there that are just passionate about gaming and want to talk about games that they love. And yeah, not everybody's just out there trying to get the clicks, so to speak, right? That's part of it, of course, because that's business. But
yeah,
I think if you just chase good content, you don't really need to chase the clicks, because it just kind of comes, right? That's my take on the whole situation.
Yeah, and that's why we launched Insider the way we did. Like, there is questions around ethics on leaks and that kind of stuff, because we are a very leak heavy website, right? So like in the past 12 months, I've probably done 150 exclusives. I'm doing quotation marks in the air because you can't see me on the camera. Exclusives where we're reporting exclusively on a game coming out or whatever it may be. Of course, we've done some bigger stories on like the morale over at Ubisoft, which was a pretty big one that I did a couple of months ago. But the whole premise behind that is that we're doing something different that nobody else is doing in the industry, so we stood out, right? We're not doing everything that everybody else is doing, and B, I find it fascinating. I like to learn about game development. I like to speak to the people working on the games, and it's just a very strong driving factor for me to be able to carry on doing what I'm doing. It's just, yeah, it's a passion project, but obviously you need to pay yourself, so you've got to do certain things to get the revenues and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting times. And unfortunately, for example, like you said with Kotaku, where does that end up, right? If in 2 years those clicks drive down, do we see Kotaku become a 6-person team like Second Wind, where it's completely fan funded? I don't really see that happening, and unfortunately, I see it being the case where Kotaku now do their own company like Second Wind did after they all left Destructoid. And yeah, that's just the reality of the process that we're going through at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't think Kotaku is going anywhere for, depending on how a listener particularly feels about them. I do think, like, I don't agree with Ethan Gatch all the time. He and I get into it a lot, but I do think there is value about having people that challenge us in interesting ways. There's articles that I have problems with. There's articles that I like. And I think that's true for any group collaboration like that, right? You're going to have people that you don't necessarily agree with. And I don't know, it just sort of is what it is. And if they post publicly, you can decide who you follow and who you read and who you don't. And that's a good thing. I don't know. Like I have the choice to click a video or not, right?
So, yeah. There's enough of the pie for everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. I do really appreciate you making the time. And I talked to you about your snowmobile picture. I really like it. I used to go snowmobiling with my dad all the time.
Yeah, like I said, that red snowmobile is more well known than me, so that's why I've kept it for as long as I have.
Well, I like what you're doing. I don't know if I brought up the lower third, but it's Tom Henderson. But really, it's insider gaming, right? That's your main posting methodology, and you've got some really good stuff out there. I'm gonna do the outro. I just have to figure out how to do it every single time because I can't figure it out. Thank you, Tom. And
no worries.
Thank you to all the members for supporting. I do really appreciate you. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by clicking the join button right down there. I love getting great guests like Tom on and others who I have planned for the month. I think it's going to be a good one. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by doing it by clicking that join button right down there. Oh my goodness, this outro. Tom, thank you again. Anything you want to plug before we go?
No, you can just see me at insidergaming.com and you'll see all of our stories over there. But yeah, that's it. I appreciate the invite and been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Tom. We're gonna get out of here, and I'll see you for the next one. And Tom will see you over on Insider Gaming. Bye for now, everybody.